Our first speaker tonight is Jaime.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jaime, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Keith, for asking me to speak. Actually, thanks to Nicky for telling me I was going to be her speaker tonight. You guys are in for a treat. I'm here to kill 10 minutes, so bear with me. Just to qualify a little bit, my sobriety date's August 18th, 2018, so I'm right there at it. And, God's timing is funny because August 16th of 2018, I was melting down. I don't remember much about that day except there was some Xanax involved, probably a fifth of tequila, and whatever else I could put in my mouth to make me feel different because that's the only thing I wanted to feel. And this morning's meeting was right on time, too, because the reading was, we became alcoholics through a self-imposed crisis, which could not be postponed or evaded. And I remember reading those words the first time and thinking, that's exactly how it happened for me. It was time. And I created that crisis. And I had just moved to California. I'm from Tennessee originally. I had just moved to California, and I thought if I could just get to California, everything might be better. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. Even though I wanted to move to California for years, I didn't get it the exact way I wanted to. Everything had to be on my terms all the time. And if it was slightly different, I was just a giant 40-year-old baby. For whatever reason, I was miserable. I was 3 blocks from the beach here in Manhattan Beach, had a place to live. It was free. I didn't have to work. And that gave me just enough time to drive myself crazy. 2 weeks with myself was enough. I'd quit my job to move out here. That was the main thing that bothered me, is I didn't want to feel like I needed other people to help me. So we moved in with my in-laws. What that did was really just expose my alcoholism. You know, they saw it firsthand how bad I had gotten. And, my drinking career is pretty unremarkable, except for the fact that my reaction to alcohol is just different than everybody else's. I don't have the arrest records. I don't have the rock bottom. I don't have the scorecard to prove that I'm an alcoholic, except for that I tore my life apart from the inside out. I was my own worst enemy, and I knew for about probably the last 6 years that I should be here with you guys. But this is the last place I wanted to be. So I fought it, and I thought I could control it. And it just kept getting worse and worse and harder to control and harder to hide from people. And, I'd alienate myself from friends mostly. That's really what I found out through the steps of this program. Making amends to the people who were closest in my life, most people were like, we had no idea, or it wasn't as bad as you think it was. But in my own head, I was awful, And so my circle shrunk slowly and slowly and slowly till it was basically just me drinking by myself at my house. That was the self-imposed crisis that brought me here. August 16th is my mother-in-law's birthday, and I don't know what I said or did, but I did something, and I came out of the blackout, and my mother-in-law's looking at me, and she said, if you're so miserable, why don't you just go back to Tennessee? And my wife at the time told me she would like a divorce. And I said, screw you guys. I'm going to go drink like I want to drink, and went to a hotel just down the street here at the Hilton Garden Inn. I was special. I had hotel points. I was a big deal, you guys. So I took all my toys and went to the Hilton Garden Inn and drank for about 24 hours, and I decided I had to go to rehab. I had a moment on the 18th where I decided I was going to go to rehab. It turns out you can't just decide you're going to go to rehab and call. They don't take you in like the Hilton Garden Inn did. I didn't have frequent flyer miles at that place. So what happened was I was trying to and I know this by looking at my phone for a few days after I got sober. I had been searching for rehabs on my phone, and that SAMHSA hotline pops up, the suicide hotline. I called the suicide hotline. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and they asked me to hold, which is that 5 minutes? And ended up calling 911. They told me they do not provide rides to rehab. And they decided at that point that they would come provide me a ride to Del Amo Mental Hospital, and thought I needed 72 hours of alone time. So that's how I ended up here. And, I was miserable. And this was the only card I had left to play. It's like, fine, I'll go to rehab. I'll try AA, but I'm not gonna do it like you guys do. When I came in and saw the steps on the wall, I was raised in the Church of Christ, and I thought those looked a lot like the Ten Commandments. And I was told if I didn't follow the Ten Commandments, I was going to hell, and I thought you guys were telling me the same thing. And I did not want to do any of that stuff. I did not want to take a look at my behavior. I did not want to accept consequences of my own actions that got me here. I did not want to make amends. I thought that was going to be an apology tour, and I was just really scared to change. That's the bottom line. Anything different was scary. And, I sat here for a while in this program and didn't do a whole lot except for show up to meetings. The good thing about the South Bay, if you're new, there are a ton of meetings and there's a ton of fellowship, and that can get you through for a while. And I thought I could figure this thing out on my own and quit drinking on my own self-will. And that's true. I was able to do that for a while. But what I can't do with my own self-will is cure my selfishness, my anger, my depression, my judgment of other people, my temper, all that stuff that comes through the steps, and it comes through support from you guys. So at about 3 years, I was miserable again because I hadn't worked any of the steps. I decided to finally grab a sponsor and go for it all the way in, because I was just as miserable sober as I was the day before I walked in here without doing those steps. And, that's where the change really happened for me. Working the steps, again, showed me what was my part in all that stuff. I blamed everybody for everything. I was mad at my dad when I came in here. I was mad at my ex-wife when I came in here. I was mad at my mother-in-law. I thought they all did this stuff to me, but I realized I was creating all those situations and all those resentments and all those things that just piled up until I couldn't take it anymore. And that's what I was drinking at. And by the time I started drinking at my problems, it was too late, And only God or a higher power could have helped me out. I didn't want it to be God at first, but after a couple of years of calling it whatever higher power, spirit of the universe, whatever that is, I just decided God was an easier word. And it's just an easier way to let everybody in here help you. I wanted to create my own program, and I realized you guys already have it figured out. I don't have to make any new stuff up. And just diving into this fellowship, I've had commitments that's helped keep me sober, especially in the early days. I still have commitments today. I've got sponsees. I've got a sponsor. I've got a crowd of people around me today that I didn't have when I walked in the door. And, 7 years later, I don't see a reason to change that. I was just on a business trip this week, and it was like sales training at our corporate headquarters. And the company I work for almost has a 12-step system for sales. And they really do. I mean, it's as close to the 12 steps as I've ever seen. And he's like, if you mess up, if you're having trouble here, go back to one of these steps, and that's where you're having the trouble. And I'm like, am I in an AA meeting right now? And, the thing about that is like 7 years ago, that would have seemed corny to me because I was afraid to be new. I was afraid to not know all the answers. I had to be like this special person. And now I just know that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be new. It's okay not to know everything. It's okay to need help. And, I raise my hand for help on a daily basis. I ask God for help on a daily basis, and I show up to meetings, and you guys help me on a daily basis, and that's what makes all the difference in my life. I don't have to get twisted up over just the little minutia that used to drive me insane. I did yell at a guy on a bicycle today, but that was his fault. That's a different story, and I'm only a 10-minute speaker. I'm grateful for this program, and I'm grateful for my sobriety, and thanks for paying a 12-step call on me.
Let's hear it for Jaime. Please join me in welcoming Nicky from Redondo Beach.
My name's Nicky and I'm an alcoholic. Hi guys. Good evening, family. I am honored and privileged to be here tonight. I want to welcome all the newcomers. I hope you hear something that keeps you coming back, and if not, there are plenty of meetings here in the South Bay. I want to welcome anybody who's feeling new today, or kind of crispy, because I could feel crispy even with time. And I want to congratulate those that are celebrating milestones or who took birthdays recently. Right? I did identify as an alcoholic. I have a sobriety date of July 25th, 2011, and for that I am grateful. I did not pick that day. I didn't come into these rooms, I didn't come in here skipping like I wanted what you had. And since I have the time, I'm going to tell you what it was like, and my favorite subject is me, so you get to hear all about it right now. Way back, I come from this amazing immigrant parents, right? My mother's from Mexico, my dad's from Greece, and they come here for this American dream. And there's alcohol in my home at all times, not alcoholically, but they hosted a lot of parties. Hence, we're Greek Mexican, and we love to party. And we owned restaurants, And at home, it was just very acceptable to have a beer or a shot of ouzo or tequila or whatever, right? Just for fun and for free. My real father, was an alcoholic and a gambler and a cokehead and a crackhead and a sex addict. And my mom was codependent, and you guys got me, So there you go. Now, everything I say after this is going to make sense, okay? So what happened, what it was like, I'm a middle child. I was born into this beautiful home where I was kind of lost in the shuffle of things. I was too young to kind of know what the adults were doing, but I was old enough to get it, like you should know better. And I was kind of stuck in the middle. Like I wanted to hang out with my older brothers because they were doing like big boy stuff, and but I didn't want to be like my sisters because I wasn't into like My Little Pony or like Rainbow Bright. I never felt girly girl, so I wanted to do what the boys were doing. So I'm out there in the riverbeds and I'm tagging on walls and my story does have different forms of alcoholism in it, and it's my story, so I'm going to honor that. On the big book, I just talk about it on page 9 and 22, the high-powered sedative, like our predecessors talked about that, and my story is no different. So at a very young age, I was exposed to alcohol and other forms as well, and I love the effects produced by. Fill in the blank, as long as it wasn't what Nicky was feeling at the moment, because I was a scared little lost girl in my own home. And what took place is I would go to school and I would be first chair clarinet, which I was, for 3 years, I held that spot. Let me tell you, man, I played my heart out. And I was drum major because I wanted to be like a little masculine with the boys and do that. And then I was an audio visual because it got me out of class. And then I was teacher's pet because I was an overachiever. And then I was in cheer because I had a loud voice and they could hear me across the room. And I was also drum major because, I had this really loud voice. And let me know if I'm too loud. No. Okay, and what ended up happening was I played the role very well, and then I would go home, and I was told that I was better seen than heard, and I was better to speak when spoken to, and I didn't like that very well. I didn't like the way it made me feel, so I couldn't wait to get out of that house and to be all those other things that I was when I wasn't home. And my parents come here for that American dream, They come here for what they believe the American dream stood for. And so what that looked like is they were too busy providing and not really parenting little Nicky, And so like little Nicky liked to do things as long as she didn't get caught, it wasn't wrong, And that carried me through my teenage years, In my junior high years, I graduated to more high-powered sedatives, and there was always alcohol on the table because that's very sociably acceptable, right? And it's now no longer like, I'm no longer a weekend warrior. Like, I'm now drinking on Mondays, right? Because I had a crazy weekend. And then on Wednesdays, it's like somebody brings a bottle and it's in a water bottle, and then someone brings a bong, and then somebody brings like a piercing gun, and it's like a whole party on recess and break time. It's like you never know what's going to happen when you show up at school, I grew up in the beautiful city of Southgate, California, and that's right, the gate. And I have a full Greek name, so I was already awkwardly like not liked by many of my peers. I got called names because my name was different than theirs, because my skin tone didn't match theirs, because I had a deeper toned voice, because I had a different shaped nose, because I spoke 3 languages. Like, I was already discriminated by my peers. So I had to like hide and mask and escape how I felt at a very young age. And thank God for drugs and alcohol, for the truth. And there were some drugs that just kept me going a little further, which kind of saved me from some dark corners and with low companions. Like, so I don't want to say like I promoted those high-powered sedatives, but it allowed me to party harder and longer than most. And I kind of earned some stripes within my peers for being like that person who can keep up. And maybe even like out drink and out smoke some of them, and I took pride in who I became around those people. It was a very distorted perception of like respect amongst my peers. And meanwhile, I'm getting straight A's in school. Right? Like higher learning, guys, and so at the age of 15, because we owned restaurants, we would move to a different city to open up a new restaurant. So I already spoke really fast to begin with. So I made friends really fast in a new city, in a new town. I was the new girl, and I got to invent whoever I wanted to be in that new school. I was really good at it, and I want to say, like, I learned to lie at a very young age. My mother would say, like, don't tell your father you did this. And I was like, right, noted, So I already knew. I already had the gift of gab, so I already knew how to lie. And it wasn't a lie because I really wasn't, it was just not telling you. So I became that person, I'm the chameleon. So when I'm in band class, I'm a band geek. And when I'm doing something else, the right hand don't know what the left hand is doing. And that's just the way it was. That was my get down. I would like to say that those 2 brothers that I had were my heroes. They drank and smoked with impunity. There was no consequences to their behavior and their actions. And I wanted to be just like them. Unfortunately, our anatomy is different. I would get in trouble every single time. Every single time. If I was home right now, I'd be grounded, I was always grounded. And those brothers, unfortunately, it caught up to them. One of them ended up getting into some trouble due to some strong arm robbery stuff. And that person went away on vacation for a little bit and wasn't seen. And the other brother became gang affiliated, and that became his lifestyle. They were still my heroes. I still wanted to be like them. On the weekends, I would dress like them. I would wear the wife beaters and the really ironed Ben Davis, and I wore the Cortez. And my hair never really could have stayed up with the Aquanet, but I would really like part the hair, and I would wear like, I pretended to be somebody I wasn't. I spoke the language and the lingo, and I saw that those people were being respected for the way they were living and the things they were doing to people. And it wasn't respectful, but I saw that like they were seen and heard. And I hung around with those people, and I did what they did. I participated in bad behavior, and I'm not proud of that. I say that because, the story that I'm going to tell you is one of transformation. And I never wanted to be, that person doing those things or participating. All I wanted to do was have a drink. I wanted to be the party girl, right? I wanted to have a good time. But that lifestyle came with consequences. You become part of the lifestyle, you get caught in the crossfire. And what ends up happening is, people lose their lives, and homes get wrecked, and children become orphans. And it gets really dark really fast, right? So I keep my running shoes on. I do the geographic, right? And I go from one place to another, or from one one crowd to another crowd, because I'm a chameleon, right? I was taught at a very young age, you read the room and you adjust and conform and you pivot, and I'm really good at that. But I took all that guilt and shame and anger and resentment and fear with me everywhere that I went. I just didn't show you. I would just put it in the backpack and zip it shut and stuff it as far as I could down. And what happened was at the age of 15, we had an opportunity to move to the city of Oceanside, California. And, while I was there, I made some friends really fast. I made some fast friends really fast. And, I'm a freshman in high school. And, I want to party with the seniors, right? The jocks and the captain of the varsity football team. And that's what all the cool kids are, doing all the cool things, right? And it didn't take long before I was hanging out, not going to class. The good thing is that I'm a good student, so I always made up my grades, or I would do work in advance knowing I was going to miss. I'm a smart alcoholic, Yeah, there you go. Planned it out. Totally. So what happened was in my freshman year, my story has has a few dark moments, And usually when I first got sober, I used to not share about it because I was still processing because it had power over me. But I today I'm a free woman, because of working these steps in order as suggested with an amazing sponsor. I can talk about it and it no longer rents space in my head. And I can tell you that it no longer has power over me. So, one specific day I'm hanging out and I am at a ditching party, or at least that was the plan. And I go with these two gentlemen to get drunk. And back then we drank 40s out the freezer because that's the way we did it, while watching Beavis and Butthead. Yes. And so what ended up happening is I'm drinking because I love the effects produced by alcohol. And next thing I know, I come to. And I come to and I don't know what's happening because I'm in a daze. And all I know is that I'm scared and there's adrenaline rushing through my body and I don't know how to get out of it. And it was 2 against 1. And all I thought was like, man, all I wanted to do was drink this 40 and go to this ditching party and smoke some weed and get home before the bus got me home so my mom wouldn't know that I had ditched today, right? Because at home I'm a good girl because that's how they taught me. They taught me I'm better seen than heard. They taught me you speak to me when spoken to. And that's not who I was when I wasn't home. And I remember that day, for the first time I had feared my life. Normally I don't fear my life. I was probably too under the influence or, I wasn't in that much trouble. But on this specific day I was in trouble. And there was no one around me. No one knew where I was because I had ditched. I hadn't told anybody. And so by the grace of God, I know today it's my higher power that got me out of there alive. But I carried that shame and that guilt. And I ended up getting a ride home by some people. And my mom happened to be at the bus stop, and she said, you weren't there. And I was like, oh, I got a ride home. And she said, you didn't go to school. And so that was a Friday afternoon. And that weekend, we owned a home in Tijuana, Baja California. And we're down there. And I am, I'm not a vision for you. I'm pretty messed up on the inside and the outside. I'm emotionally bankrupt. And I'm just spiritually sick. And my mom said, what happened? And I would like to tell you that when I got home, there was these caravan of cars following me home. And, they came out and they drew their guns and they pointed their guns at me and my mom and my sister. And apparently one of those girls in that group of cars was the girlfriend of one of those gentlemen. And they told my mother to kiss me goodbye because I wouldn't make it back after Monday. And so that whole weekend, my mom asked me what had happened. And I told her I don't remember because I didn't. And, in the next couple of days, I stayed horizontal. I stayed in the fetal position. I really didn't know what happened, but my mind started to process it. I came out of the fog. And I realized at that point what had happened. And I didn't want to go back to school. And so I had to sit down and tell my mother what was happening. And, the words that came out of her mouth were not caring, were not nurturing. They were like, you brought shame and guilt to this family. And it was really hard because she thought she had failed me as a mother. And really, she had no choice but to try to process my own trauma. And she didn't have the proper tools to do so. And so what proceeded to happen is that I didn't go back to school. because I feared my life. And I went to the police department. We filed the police report. And that next day, we packed up and we moved away. And so my entire family had to leave the country because all Nicky wanted to do was ditch, have a drink, and get drunk. Right? But my alcoholism was progressing at this time, and I'm 15 years old, and all I want to do is party, you know? So what happened is I do the geographic. I'm now living in Tijuana. I'm in a whole different country. Thank God I speak the language, but it's just a whole nother world, you know? And the consequences of my behavior progress as well. It didn't take long to make those low companions. I mean, I could spot them a mile away, you know, and they do things a little different over there. You know, there is little to no respect on family and morals. They don't care. Like, I had friends ended up in barrels, you know, delivered to their families, you know, just because they did something that they weren't supposed to or didn't follow directions, you know. And I did what, like, the best thing I could do as an alcoholic at 15 is I took my parents to court and I emancipated myself. I divorced them. And I got married, you know? And I was like, I'm out of here, guys. And at the time, it was a really great idea because my parents did not know how to address Nicky, talk to Nicky, nurture Nicky, provide a sacred space for Nicky, because I was still processing what had happened. And what it caused me to do is it caused me to just desensitize. I became numb, like, oh, well, I'm tainted goods. Who cares now, right? And so that caused me to go into a downward spiral for a long period of time. And at 15, I'm now married. I wasn't pregnant. People always kept asking, are you pregnant? Because I was Mexican. I'm 15. I'm married. You know, I'm married. I'm not pregnant. And I was going to school in Mexico. You know, and at one point, I started going to school in San Diego, and I was like literally living two lives in one day. I would cross the border, you know, jump on a trolley, go to high school, do my school, and then I was working graveyard at Denny's from like 10 to 6 in the morning. And then it was like in the morning, rinse and repeat, like go surfing, smoke bong logs, drink a 40, go to school. And it was just like, I had no rules at this point. I had no curfew. I had no parents telling me what to do, how to do it, when to get home. You know, and it was fun until it wasn't. You know, for 2 years I played house and it was great. But, you know, if you're anyone like me, I don't love myself. I don't value my body, my time, or others. And so I am bleeding into everything around me. And I end up disrespecting my husband, and I end up involving myself with his brother because we're in school together. We're spending more time together than I am my own husband, you know? And plus it was out of convenience. So, and what alcoholic doesn't like convenience, right? At the end of the bottle was a good time. So I'm now 17 years old. And I keep my running shoes on because I knew the second that person found out I had been with his brother, which happened to be, he pulls out a machete and he's like, he's angry. He's angry at me. Rightfully so. And at this point, I value my life. I realize that I'm in trouble again, and I got to get out of there. And so I come back to LA, you know, and everywhere I go, I take Nicky with her. So I bring all of that shame and guilt and anger and resentment and fear that I've been just packing away, man. My bag's getting really big. I need wheels at this point. You know, I come back to LA. And I'm dealing with, my parents are like, if you live in this house, you're gonna follow our rules. And like, they got me now. All they ever wanted to do was just put a hold on me. And I'm home now. And once you're home, you can't leave, you know? And I'm like, gosh, you know? So I involved myself as much as I could in school, but at one point I had to go home. And I remember going home and they treated me as if I was like 11 years old all over again. Like, go to your room and speak when spoken to, and I was like, I don't need this anymore, you know? And it didn't take long to find a willing participant to engage with and to leave that home, you know? And my alcoholism was full-blown at this point. At this point, that alcoholism is crashing cars, draining bank accounts, you know? I'm bleeding into everything, you know? It's horrible. I'm now 18 years of age. I have a full-time job at Montgomery Ward, you know? And I'm self-supporting through my own contributions. I graduated high school with honors and scholarships because that's the alcoholic that I am, and I find myself at Cerritos College, right? Because I have all these vouchers to go to school, but I couldn't make it past the bathroom stall, And I found myself making more money and getting more gratification from selling drugs to young ladies trying to lose weight. Right. And I capitalized on that. That was like my niche right there. And I did that for a long time. What happens when you hang around in dark corners and low companions, you meet high places and low corners, and that's what happened to me. I ended up involving myself with an individual that was affiliated with a very, God, how do I say this? Just a criminal activity, without giving out the names. And, and we're doing power lunches, and at this point, I'm like a getaway driver. We're drive-by shooting. It's like stuff out of a movie, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, it's fun. It's fun, right? I don't look nothing like them. Like, I'm not getting pulled over. Like, I'm not getting caught, and therefore, it's not wrong, And, I love the effects produced by now the lifestyle. I love it. Right? Because I'm hanging out with those people and I'm getting that respect, and I walk in a room and they're giving me their seat, right? And what do you need? And I love that, right? I was like, this is what I've always wanted. And although I'm not gang affiliated, because I thought I was just too good for that, like I was taking drugs and alcohol and women into these neighborhoods, and engaging and participating in just exploiting women, and all I wanted to do was drink. Like, that was my only purpose. I was like my only thing I wanted, and that's not what comes out of that lifestyle. You get caught up really quick, And I really want to say that I'm super grateful for the steps, because a lot of things happened during that course of time, and I thought I would end up having to take it to the grave, otherwise it would have killed me. And I'm super grateful that the steps are in the order that they're in, and I'll get into that part before I finish my share tonight. So that goes on and on for a while. There's a lot of hers. There's a couple of hims in my story. I don't discriminate. It's a numbers game for me, And so what ends up happening is I end up meeting a gentleman who drinks like me, parties like me, says he loves me, right? And all I've ever wanted to do is be told that I'm loved and that they're proud of me, that I'm good enough, right? And my parents could never tell me that, especially after what had happened. So I find love in the bottle, and I find love in the form of a human, and I involved myself with this man. The first night I met him, he fought 5 Samoans, and I'm like, I'm in love, because I also love the effects produced by violence, I'm 5'1" 3/4", but my ego is 6'3", and it's always the tallest person in the room that tries to come at me, and I like to climb trees, man. I take them down, and I got really good at doing that. And I'm super grateful I don't get to live like that today. I really am. So I'm married to this man. I'm not even married yet. I got married to this guy. At 3 months of meeting him, I end up pregnant with my first son. And based on my story, I don't believe in love. I don't even love myself. So how am I going to love another human? And so I don't want to have this baby, because that means I'm responsible for something, and I've never had to be responsible or accountable for nothing, so why start now? And somehow he convinced me. He convinced me to get into a relationship, and I guess I was already in one, And I ended up getting married, and I had this little boy, and this little boy, the most beautifulest thing I've ever seen in my life, I'm 21 years old, and I'm giving birth to this beautiful boy, and I thought that would have helped me stop drinking and using. As an alcoholic woman, I drank and used throughout my entire pregnancy, because the literature tells us how to stop and stay stopped, but I didn't have those resources back then. I didn't know that I actually had a choice. If anything, I was being handed a beer by the aunt saying, drink this, it's good for the breast milk, And I'm doing it because it's so socially acceptable in my culture, and I've told you guys that I love violence, and this relationship I'm in is toxic, and it's unhealthy. It's emotionally and physically and mentally abusive, and I'm stuck. I'm doing the deal because I don't know there's nothing better out there for me, And I'm married to this man, but I'm the other woman, because I go from having low self-esteem to no self-esteem, and I'm okay with that. He would come home with a different car and another tennis bracelet and a Rolex, and in addition to the house. by the time I left that man, I had 17 cars in the driveway, without exaggeration. And I had 2 homes and an income property, and we owned a business. And that money, property, and prestige diverted me from my primary purpose for a very, very, very long time. And so what happened is at 7 years, I got the itch, and I was ready to leave. We did the whole marriage counseling therapy thing. I drank and used before that therapy session because I didn't want to feel what was about to come out in that room. And half the time, he wouldn't even show up, so it became a one-on-one therapy session, which was great because I guess my higher power thought I needed that. And what came out of that therapy session was I got pregnant a second time, and that actually saved my life. That little boy helped me leave that man for the second time. And I would tell you that, and I wish I could tell you I never went back, but as a single mother, living in the culture I live in, they tell you, like, their children need their father. And I heard what my elders were telling me, and so I went back. And I went right back to that verbal abuse and the emotional neglect, and I took it. I took it like a good girl, like they told me to take it, and I did. And that resentment built more and more day by day for that man, And then what happened was, because I want to get to the part where, like, I get sober, right? Because I told you what it was like. And what happened was, the violence got really bad, and I ended up with a few concussions. But he never kept me down. I'd get right back up. I took that. That's right. And I lived a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde life for a very, very long time. I worked at a cancer center, and I trained doctors for a living with a lab coat. I was like professional, And then when I got home, I was like a tweaker and an alcoholic and a stoner, and a drug dealer and arms dealer and you name it. And the resume is like 5 pages long, front and back, And I'm super grateful I don't have to live like that no more, and that no longer defines who I am today, But I would like to tell you that I love that my higher power hears prayers, my silent prayers that I prayed for, not a foxhole prayer, a prayer that I was like, I'm done, but I don't know how to leave, And the way my higher power works, he's pretty dramatic. I have a really dramatic higher power, And he sent these that really loud knock on the door one morning, and these wonderful men in bulletproof vests came in, man, and they saved me. They made a mess of the house, I'll tell you that much. They put my husband in handcuffs, and the Department of Children and Family Services deemed me an unfit parent, and my children were in danger, and they didn't take them, I gave them away. They took my kids. And you would have thought that would have been a moment of clarity, but it wasn't. Because now I'm really feeling the effects of shame and guilt and fear and resentment, and I'm angry, and they have their guns pointed at us, and my little boys have red dots on their foreheads. And all I want to do is drink, right? But no amount of drugs or alcohol at this point is going to numb that shame and guilt and anger and resentment and fear, and I'm really scared now. And, I'm really grateful for how my higher power intervened, because it had to be this dramatic act of just God to come in and remove me. Unfortunately, he did not remove the bondage of self. He just removed me from that prison that I had. I had built this beautiful home with this man and these beautiful children. And what had happened is after the raid was over and the DEA had left my house and the K-9 unit has left and the all the sheriffs and the nosy neighbors went back in their house. My next indicated step was to grab a drink from the refrigerator, roll a joint, and turn on a movie. And I called one of my best friends, and I said, I need you. And I've known her since I was a little girl. And she said, are you okay? And I said, no. And she got there, and she helped me kind of clean up the place a little. And I didn't know what to do. I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what do I do? My house was raided, the kids are gone, the husband... Let's go to Taco Tuesday and grab a drink, because I don't know what else to do. And I did. I proceeded to go to the bar at Sunset Beach, and it was Taco Tuesday. And I had already called into work sick, so I didn't have to go back to work that day. And what followed after, it didn't lead me directly into Alcoholics Anonymous, but I had some stepping stones. I was court ordered to attend a self-esteem class, because apparently I had self-esteem problems. And I was court ordered to attend an anger management class, and I didn't think I had an anger problem. I just thought I loved to fight, And but when the state of California takes your children away, you get really angry, because they're not telling you when they're going to return your kids to you. They're not telling you when you can have a conversation with them that's not monitored. I was told to leave my home and to take all my clothes with me, because whoever's drugs and firearms we had that they had removed and confiscated was going to come after us. And what they didn't understand, that was our stuff. Like we were the people, And when my house was raided, my phone stopped ringing. And that was a blessing in disguise that I could look at now, because there was heat on me and nobody wanted nothing to do with me. And that left room for you people. So I finished anger management. I aced that shit, right? I get a certificate of completion. I finished my self-esteem class. I got a little self-esteem, right? I had a parenting class. I learned so much about parenting. I learned not to parent out of guilt and how to parent out of love. And every way that my parents had raised me in the state of California in 2011 was considered child abuse, and I didn't realize that. I was raised that way. Like, rice on the floor, get on your knees, or like I can go on and on about punishments, right? So I learned, and I'm super grateful that I was court ordered to that parenting class, because now my husband no longer has access to those boys, and I have to raise them on my own. And I'm grateful for the men and women that are honorary aunties and uncles that were there for me when I needed you guys, because it's scary and it's lonely to raise two little boys. They're 4 and 11 years old. Puberty's about to hit, and I don't know what's going on with my boys. And so I'm living in the city of Fullerton at the time. I get an opportunity to get a job in the city of Manhattan Beach. I know nothing about Manhattan Beach except it's probably near the beach, right? And I'm willing to make the drive from Fullerton, California here. And my sister happens to work for Chevron. And she's, why don't you move to El Segundo? And I'm like, what is El Segundo? And so she found me a place like the next day on her lunch break. And I went and checked it out, and I moved in, and I signed the lease after. Who does that, right? That's God's people working in my life. And so I ended up in the beautiful South Bay area when I was almost 2 years sober. So I get those kids back at 7 months. And I realized when I'm 7 months sober, I've never parented sober. My first drink was at 5 years old. And when I got sober at 33, my kids were in protective custody. I've never parented them sober. I've never cooked a sober meal or folded sober laundry, so amongst other things. And I was scared. I was scared that I was going to run out of food. I was scared that I was going to do something wrong. I was scared that I was going to disappoint somebody. I was scared of drinking and using. It was a healthy fear. And but I would come to these meetings, right? And I would hear, I would like to tell you that when I first came into these rooms, I did not have the intention of staying sober, let alone getting sober. So I would hear, like, keep coming back. And so I would come in here under the influence. So if anyone's here and they're not sober, welcome. I welcome you. I welcome you to challenge yourself just to not drink or use just for today. And I would come into the rooms, and you would tell me to keep coming back, but you wouldn't stay sober. And I would go back out to my car, and I would drink and use. Because I hadn't got to the part of the literature, because I wasn't even in the steps. So there was no solution in my life. There was just abstinence in between meetings, and really just in the meeting. Because once I was out of the meeting, I was drinking and using. Because if your kids were in protective custody and your husband was in jail and your house was raided, you would drink too. So it's July of 2011. It's hot. I'm thirsty. I'm drinking, guys. So when I see people struggling, I get it. There's never been a reason to stop. Not even being pregnant. Not even being hospitalized. Not even when you're having a root canal and you have to take antibiotics. Like, I never stopped. There was never, I came to, I ran out, but I never stopped. So now I'm 33 years of age. I've been drinking since I'm 5 years old, and I'm adding these high-powered sedatives to keep me going. And I'm 33 years old, and the kids are 4 and 11, and I'm getting monitored visits. And my kids are like, we just want to go home. Like, when are we going to go home? And I would go to those visits, and I would hang out with the kids, and they would be like, time's up, and I would have to leave, and I would cry every single time I had left my kids. But I would cry my ass into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would sit here, and I would hear what you guys would say, and you guys would laugh, and you guys would clap, and I would think you guys were full of it, right? I want what you have, but I'm not willing to do the work. Because it hurts. It hurts to be armed with the facts of self. So I got into enough pain, because there is a solution. And I got voluntold. I got my first sponsor by being told what to do. And, I said, I got, what else, what do I have to lose? I want to get these kids back. So I came in here with the hidden agenda. I had motives and intentions as to why I wanted to stay sober. And it wasn't to stay sober. It was to close the case, get my kids back, and prove it to them that I can do it. And I was no longer a fuck up. So I started doing the work, right? My sponsor had me sit on step 1 for the longest time, right? And she would always make me list 3 reasons of my unmanageability and how I was powerless. And I had a book full of them. I had been running and gunning for a very, very long time, and I had a hard word with the word alcohol, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's all over the big book, right? And so she allowed me to cross the word out and put whatever I was slave to. And then we would go back and read that page. It took us forever to get through the book, but I identified at that point. And little by little, I started pulling back those layers. But, half measures availed you nothing. And I kind of rested on my laurels for a very long time. And Jaime mentioned in his share, I didn't finish my first set of steps till I was almost 5 years sober. I was scared. I was scared of that 4th step. I was scared of telling you what I had participated in and allowed to happen in my life. And step 1 talks about you had to admit that you were powerless. I had to admit. And being powerless sounds like I'm weak. That's what it sounds like I'm saying, I'm weak. And where I come from, you can't show weakness, And being unmanageable, no way, my life's unmanageable. Clearly, the reason why I ended up here was because I had these amazing men in bulletproof vests. My life is clearly unmanageable. It was all his fault, And then when I got to step 2 and it came to believe, my higher power got me caught up in some really dark corners with some really low companions. Remember? So I didn't want that higher power. And the best thing is that I was able to reinvent what my higher power was. Today I have this beautiful, loving, my God loves me big. My God loves me big. I would come in here and I would tell my God, how big my problems were. And I was like, don't you know, And then one time a person told me, how about you start telling your problems how big your God is? And I was like, damn, I could do that. And so I did. I had to shift that perception, right? And step 3, turning things over. I got this. I'm good. Don't you know who I am? I got this. And then when I got to step 3, turning it over had claw marks. Everything I turned over to my higher power had claw marks on it. Let me tell you. And what happened was my first sponsor had me get a God box. And so I could literally turn it over, write it, stick it in there. It got full pretty quick, It was a lot of things to turn over. In the course of this time, I'm trying to get custody of my children. I'm fighting the ex-husband still, but I'm staying sober. And then I get to step 4 and that list that I had to make, it was long. It was really long. I left a lot of names out. I left a lot of people, places, and things out because I was afraid that if it got into the wrong hands, I would be incarcerated for life. And so I'm really grateful that when I got to the 5th step and we read it out loud and we carved out just me, my sponsor, and my higher power at this point, which I had now gotten to know, who was a loving sponsor. At the very end, when I was done, she asked me, did you leave anything out? And I'm really grateful she did that because I was able to tell her the things that I was going to take to the grave with me that had been renting so much space in my head. And it was really hard, but we sat there for 6 hours and I vomited all over her. And I thought I would feel better, but it made me kind of relive the stuff that I had gone through. But the beauty of that is that I'm not really reliving it. I'm just telling a story. I'm telling you what it was like. So I encourage you, if you're stuck on a 4-step and don't know how to do it, you're not going to have to relive it. And if you don't work your steps, you're going to relive it. So when I got to step 6, I thought, I'm done. Like, we're good. I'm still not feeling great. At this point, I got the kids back because life is still in session, right? I'm going to meetings, but life is in session. I'm going to court. I'm randomly drug testing. I'm doing all these things, like dealing with the kid's father, and which was difficult. It's difficult to practice these principles in all your affairs when you're dealing with untreated alcoholism. But you guys told me that I could take you guys everywhere I go. I never have to do this alone. And so I get into my 6th step and I learned more about my shortcomings. And I thought I was done because she handed me this big list, front and back, of character defects. And I thought she hated me. I thought my sponsor had it out for me. And she said, baby girl, there's work to be done here. And she meant it. And when I got to step 7, I realized that she meant it. I had a lot of work to do. But I had made it this far. So why quit? I'm not a quitter. Let's go, And when I got into my 8th step, for those of you that are stuck on a 4th, the 8th step is where, like the big girl chonies come on. And I made that list, right? My sponsor said, it's just a list. It's just a list. It's not, you're not doing nothing with it. There's no action behind it. And so when I got to that list, I wrote it out. And I poured my heart into that pen and paper. Because I love the effects produced by freedom from bondage of self now. And step 9 was amazing because the very first person I made an amends to was myself. I forgave myself for everything that I did and everything I participated in. I made an amends to that little Nicky for the first time in a very long time. And that was probably the best feeling I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous, that very first amends right there. Like, you can't put that in your pipe and smoke it. You can't drink that, And that was for free and for fun. And when I got to step 10, I had a really hard time with prayer and meditation because I didn't know how to really pray. My prayers were really short because I was afraid he might actually listen, And I sure as hell don't meditate, not where I come from. So, somebody suggested a guided meditation on YouTube or just throw some sounds on or do some instrumental Marvin Gaye, do something. Just throw, give yourself a few minutes. Just quiet the mind, right? And someone said, when you pray, God listens, and when you meditate, he talks to you. And I said, oh, this might end up being a healthy relationship after all, And it has been. And when I finally got the prayer meditation down, I'm like a spiritual gangster now. I love meditating. I pray 3 times a day now. I do a morning prayer, I do a midday prayer, and before I go to bed, I pray. I thank my higher power for this beautiful life that I thought I was unworthy of. I thought I wasn't worth saving. I thought I wasn't good enough. Why me? Why me? And God would say, why not you? I did suffer from survivor's remorse for many years in this program because a lot of my friends didn't make it into these rooms, and if they did, they didn't stay. And I was told that a lot of us have to die for others to live. We're all given the same resources that are laid at our feet. The book talks about it's a program of action, and we just got to pick them up and apply them in our life. Life gets difficult, life gets hard, but life shows up. I never took a day off from drinking or using, and so I don't take a day off of Alcoholics Anonymous, never. I'm a service junkie, and that takes me to step 12. It is my responsibility as a member of this 12-step program to give it away freely in order to keep it. And what that looks like for me, it could be sponsorship. It could be picking up the phone for someone that I met in a meeting. It's meeting somebody at a meeting. My service work these days are on more committee meeting levels, I'm alcoholic, so I got to be part of 3 different committees. I got to have a commitment at every meeting I'm at. And I'm fun to be around, right? I'm no longer bad company. I'm really fun to be around today. And I would like to say that my mom sleeps good at night knowing that she don't have to know where her daughter is. And at 6 years sober, I got full sole custody of those 2 boys. And it's you guys, it's Alcoholics Anonymous, it's working this program, it's applying these traditions which keep me safe from you because we're sober, we're not cured. And I have a few minutes left. I just really want to just say that my life today is unrecognizable. Those boys are men now. They're 18 and 24. You know, the 18-year-old's enlisting into the Air Force and wants to be a pilot. The 24-year-old is a mechanic working, you know, on the West Side, and he recently came back home. He came back home, which is amazing, because that kid ran from me, you know. We did many years of therapy. I do want to say that outside help is part of my story as well. You know, I'm a product of therapy, and those little boys recovered, you know, and I would always say, like, I'm in recovery, so they don't have to. That's baloney, you know. I drug them through my disease, and I got to drug them through my recovery, you know, and those kids are program babies. They know the Serenity Prayer. They know where I'm at tonight, you know, and I'm really grateful that, you know, somebody said, just take these 12 simple steps, and I promise you'll be in a different place when you're done. So my name is Nicky. I'm an alcoholic, and thank you for letting me share.